Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional from Serbia, Aleksandra Majkić. Aleksandra, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Aleksandra is an expert trainer and a partner with In Touch Female Leadership and Career Academy, and she's the Plural Site author. So, Aleksandra, before we talk about all the work that you're doing in training, tell me about your own journey in brief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so why am I here and why am I doing this? So I actually I have a technical background. So I started 15 years ago in high-tech industry and working from Serbia, exporting IT services to international markets. So I worked with a lot of different cultures, different people from different industries and on different positions, delivering robust solutions all around the globe. And during that time, I realized that I'm in a kind of male-dominated cultures. So I worked really a lot on sharpening my skills and how to actually succeed and position myself better in my company and reach the goals. So a couple of years ago, I actually started my entrepreneurial journey and started working with people and helping them educate in how to integrate the soft and hard skills. So with In Touch Female Leadership Academy, I work primarily on bringing more women to leadership positions. And we also do, what we do is actually help companies become truly diverse and inclusive.
Okay. And we will talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion a little later in our conversation. But just to continue a little more, you mentioned about the challenges that female leaders face. Tell me a little bit more about some of the challenges you faced in the high-tech industry and how did you overcome them?
So what's very specific here is that I was usually the only woman at the table, negotiating table, project management table, and working with lots of engineers. What helped me here is also my engineering background, right? But then cultures are being built in such a way, that where you have to adapt. But actually, what was really challenging is understanding some of the unwritten rules in the workplace. And this is what we actually teach a lot. To understand the unwritten rules and cultures of specific companies, specific team, your customer and the market, and play by these rules, but actually trying to change them so a lot of people can actually access and bring their own value. Because, when we speak about this unwritten rules in terms of diversity, then, we work with a lot of people, different people on a daily basis. And there's this phenomenon that's called the tip of the iceberg. So when you only see what you can see in a framework, okay, I can see the gender, I can see the age, I can see the race of people and say, well, okay, I have a diverse team, let's work with it. But what's really underneath that, the water is actually the wealth and the value of what each people can bring to your team. So overcoming these challenges is actually learning to communicate and to work and to actually help everybody express themselves. So these were really, specifically in high tech, it's all about, let's code this, let's do this, let's make it, as efficient as possible so there are no bugs, so your apps can run flawlessly, and everybody focused on that. But in that flow, we can use some good ideas, we work in one flow and overlook maybe some other possibilities. So actually overcoming this challenge and then being a female leader in that sense was something that I would say a little bit of unconscious bias there. Because, and this is the example that we give a lot. When you say, okay, think about high-tech CEO, who is the first person that comes to your mind? Well, I don't know. That could be Microsoft CEO, that could be the late Steve Jobs. And then you see a woman coming to a meeting And I usually got a lot of questions like, is your boss coming to this meeting?
Wow.
Or is your CEO coming here? Well, no, you've got me. I can cover a lot of topics with you. And what I don't know, I will then share with my team and come back with answers. Yeah.
What a great response. Thank you. And yes, you're so right. Sometimes male-dominated boardrooms can tend to get a little challenging if there is only one woman.
Yeah.
But I also then want to ask you that what are some of the benefits of having more women in technical roles for companies in the tech industry at large?
Well, I love this question, and I get asked that really, really a lot. The difference when women actually try to put on the male shoes, I'd say, then they don't bring the full value of leadership, of being a empathetic team member. So the value is actually having different perspectives and different approaches. And a lot of research states that women leaders and male leaders, and it's not just about men and women, it's all about different genders, and it's about people that have this feminine and masculine characteristics. So if I have more female characteristic dominant, that's I can bring one leadership style to the company. So the value here is actually benefiting from different perspectives, different ways of approaching problem solving, different ways of communicating with people, different ways of actually making the teams work smoothly. So I always say that in every work, we need to have this individual approach, because every team is made of a number of individuals. So we have to make sure to set some set of rules where everybody can feel psychologically safe, free to bring their true selves to work, to bring their full attention and focus to work when they are there, because there are not some kind of political games around or some kind of other incentives that actually drive this focus away. So my mission and my aim is to actually help organizations become like these, so people can have as equal as much possible opportunities that they can have. So and then we can have the value, we can have productivity rise, we can have more efficient teams, we can have improved communication with customers, and this is also a lot of numbers say this, because research from 2023 states that gender diverse teams are 15% more productive than the ones that are not diversified.
Correct. And I would endorse that completely. Throughout my life, wherever I've had strong women leader colleagues, the work ethics of the company has been much stronger and better. But thank you for a great response. My next question, Aleksandra, is how can organizations create more leadership opportunities for women in the high-tech industry?
This is kind of spreading to many elements, because we have to go back a few steps and see at the high school, see at the whole educational system, and promote STEM sciences among all genders, and actually motivate girls to enter colleges where they can study STEM sciences, and then that they can actually proceed careers afterwards. Because when I was at the Faculty of Technical Sciences, out of 100 students in my group, there were, let's say, 30% women, and we all graduated. And the statistics say that actually women graduate before men. But then when we enter the workplace, things start to change because of all of the unwritten rules. What's really specific here is that women and people with more female characteristics, we tend to keep to that college system. I study, I get a good grade, I'm rewarded. But in the workplace, there's much more than that. There's the profiling, there's visibility, there's actually sharing your success. That's how you present yourself. And this is where this race becomes a little bit different. So what can organizations do here, when we actually get to more women in not only in high tech but in all STEM, is to actually have more supportive systems in terms of when they craft all of the job vacancies, to have them gender free, so there are no biases there. Sometimes when you look at the ads, you can actually see how they're written. Maybe females won't even apply if they don't see themselves there. So this is the first step. Then when we come to talent acquisition, and a lot of companies using AI in this domain, we have to make sure that AI isn't biased also. When we do a lot of exercises with HR people, we just cover the names of the people on their CVs, and they say, okay, let's see who's a better candidate for this. So we don't make some unconscious conclusions before we actually start the process. But then, when we get to the companies, what actually women really, really appreciate is having the flexibility, the possibility of hybrid work, so they can, make more balance between families, their private life, and the work. So this is where companies can really have kind of understanding for their female leaders. Also, like really making sure that unconscious bias is out of the place.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
My next question for you, Aleksandra, is that what can women do to assert their leadership skills or in male-dominated meetings?
That's interesting, because there's this bias that's called likability bias, which actually women face, especially women of color and people of LGBTQA plus communities, because they think that they first need to be liked in the workplace and then be seen as competent. But these two don't come together. And there's this great book, What Works for Women at Workplace, that says that women always balance, like on a wire, between likability, being likable, and being seen as a competent leader. Well, not just leader, but a team member. So this is like a constant fight. And when we actually assert ourselves, then it's not seen as a positive threat as it is for men. So in these cases, some women can get different labels. Oh, she's bossy. Or she's too harsh. Oh, it doesn't come really good with her personality, and so on. And this is what we can do about it, is actually teach people that this bias exists. So with all of these biases is actually that, we have to start from ourselves, become aware of them, and then say, okay, let's go to system 2 thinking, and think about the specific characteristics, values, capabilities, and everything that this person brings to the company, regardless of their gender,
Well
or
said.
race, or cultural background, everything.
So one more question relating to female leadership, and then I'll come to DEI. I've spoken to many women leaders, and a lot of them tend to say that we go through this imposter syndrome. Am I really good enough? Can I really do this? As someone who has been so senior, who trains so many women leaders, what advice would you give to women facing an imposter syndrome?
This comes from this specific feminine characteristics, where we need to make sure to check all of the boxes before we do something.
Right.
And this is here, like, oh, wow, I didn't check one box. And then the imposter syndrome comes. Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not capable enough, and so on. But this is actually, not just, but this is a fear of change and something new. And I always encourage them to do things like, okay, if you if you've checked 60% of the boxes, just do it. Don't ask why, but why not? Let's do this. And to actually motivate them to come to realizations much faster than they usually would. You know, we prepare when we manage projects, we make sure that there are no risks to, you know, to do everything to make sure that everything will go perfectly fine. But there's nothing perfect in life, right? You know, so we have to be more, manage more resources, manage better the resources. So this is the point. You know, just sometimes you have to jump in and see how you handle. And that's it.
Well said. So my next few questions, Aleksandra, are relating to the other area that you have a lot of understanding of, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. My first question in this area is, what are some common pitfalls companies face in their DEI efforts, and how can these be avoided?
When it comes to DEI, it's all about leadership. And we talk about a lot of inclusive leadership, right? So if this is not in place, and if you look at a company and you don't see diversity in these positions, then that's like the first pitfall. How can you attract people if you're not leading by example, right? So this is the first one. Now, the second one would be that the tip of the iceberg that I mentioned. So just looking superficially, how to maybe formally do something and you know, have some laws maybe or regulations in place, but you just don't actually go in depth with them. So it's just like, okay, I have, I don't know, 40% female, 60% male. Let's see, you know, more in depth on what the structure is here, and you don't do anything about it. You just make sure that this is like, you know, filled in. And the next pitfall would be actually not providing the equal opportunities for everybody. For a leader or for a team leader or manager to be able to actually provide equal opportunities for people, they need the support of the company systems, and also work a lot individually with their team members. Talk a lot, see how they respond, how they work best, and be really, really able to give them the flexibility that they need, you know, so they can say, okay, I find, you know, that you know, most of my needs are really well satisfied in this company, and this is how we move forward. There are really good practices around the world where big companies, they celebrate different holidays, religions, days, and that's really, really nice when you see that public support.
Well said. And what, in your view, are some of the critical components of a successful DE&I strategy in companies?
Well, that's definitely coming from that leadership vision that you are grounded on. So if you are, and not thinking about in terms of just trying to do things as fast as you can, but give you know, yourself and the company time to reflect and then improve and get to there further on. There's this component of allyship. And if we don't promote that, and if we don't have allies in our company supporting female leaders, people with different backgrounds, people with disabilities, people coming from different cultures, different religions, and different races, then, you know, we can only talk about DE&I, but we are actually not putting it into practice. So there's this great example of allyship that I really like to talk about, because, you know, you can see it with children. You know, my two kids, for example, a boy and a girl, totally different energies, different communication style, different interests. But when it comes to reaching a mutual goal, for example, negotiating with me about buying chocolates, they are each other's best supporters. And this is what we need in the workplace. When we have the common goal, when this goal is transparent, then, you know, let's find a way to work towards that mutually. and include as many perspectives as we can.
Well said. And I've also spoken to many leaders, women leaders, who say that while we have a place, we have been included on the board table or in the boardroom,
Mm-hmm.
we don't yet have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
How would you address something like that?
Mm-hmm. I can also go back to this allyship, because if I'm not in the room, then I would really love to have somebody that can speak on my behalf and speak up for me in that room. So this is how we can build this voice to be even louder. And if, for example, you see on board in the USA, only 5% of women are in CEO boards or C executive levels. So this is really, really small percentage. And usually women, when they get to this stage, they say, well, I've been here, I've seen this, but I don't want to be alone here anymore. And then it comes to bringing more and creating more opportunities to bring in more female leaders there. And then they have to be each other's supporters to have their voices be actually heard and their ideas being taken into account.
Right.
This also comes to this likability bias, because I work and coach with a lot of these women that are actually in boards. And I coach this one woman. She's an executive in a big German IT company, and she's one woman with 7 other male board members. And at the first coaching session, she tells me, I really want them to like me. But by the end of this session, she tells me, I've changed my goal. I want to be seen as a competent leader, so they want to listen to me.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said. So I have time for one more question. And this question, Aleksandra, is I'm going to ask you to think about so many people you worked with and so many organizations. What initiatives have you seen in some organizations that successfully bridge the gap between underrepresented groups, not just women, and in leadership roles?
Yeah, there are a lot of companies that we work with around the globe, and people usually ask me, well, is it some kind of culture thing? When you dig deeper, it's pretty much the same in every country, right? So these initiatives really need to be led upon everywhere. There are maybe some countries that are a bit leading, but when you dig deeper, we really need more initiatives. So what I saw is for example, there's this client of ours that has introduced education for people who are in some roles that are just entering positions. For example, they have a lot of supermarkets around the Netherlands, so they made sure to have all the people who didn't have access to college education, for example, so that they have internal educations, so they can be promoted, they can learn more, they can build their knowledge base, and this is their gift to the people, and the people then feel loyal. If they didn't have enough funds and finance to actually pay for some expensive schools, so they can have then equal opportunities to be in some leadership roles, managerial roles, start something within the company. I have a client that's a big IT company, but they have set up the funds, for example, startups. So they also provide these opportunities for everybody who wants to join, So you have availability to start an enterprise of your own and then have a spin-off and go there. So, this is like the people who are really underrepresented and that face some social also, they're not also recognized in the society right from the beginning. So this is one way to actually provide them with opportunities, fund their education, and then they can bring so much value to the company and the organization.
Thank you. And on that note, Aleksandra, I want to say thank you so much for speaking to me. It's been such an amazing conversation about female leadership, about women empowerment, about all the great work you're doing, at the In Touch Female Leadership and Career Academy. Thank you for speaking to me about how women in tech can do so much more and how leaders in organizations can be much more inclusive. Thank you also for giving me your perspectives on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.